I was recently watching PBS ID Channel's video, Are There Two Nikola Teslas? And it got me thinking, are there two American revolutions? Yes, two American revolutions. Now, however far-fetched it may seem, hear me out on this one. I hope after seeing this video, you'll understand that when we think of the American Revolution, we don't think of the real American Revolution per se, but rather only an American Revolution. I think we know the Revolutionary War. After all, the American Revolution and the war that accompanied it not only determined the nation we would become, but also continues to define who we are. The whole glorious chronicle of the free-thinking colonists' rebellion against Britain's tyranny is in the American DNA. Often it is the revolution that is a child's first encounter with history. So clearly, people root for the Americans. We were the underdogs, the proponents of independence and liberty. But were we? Now, I'm not about to say that the American Revolution isn't about all these things. It is. However, I'm saying that the revolution was more than just that. It is a nuanced and not just one-sided issue. And then we're going to talk about history as kind of weird. There are many facts that typically don't make their way into the popular portrait of the American Revolution. For example, did you know that most Americans really weren't so passionate about fighting? Actually, the majority of people were neutral, and even 20% were still loyal to the British Crown, also known as Tories. The American Revolution wasn't necessarily the concerted effort that we all usually thought it to be. And secondly, the revolution wasn't all about independence and free thinking. Really, a big economic driver at the time was slavery, and the Declaration of Independence said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everybody except for Africans, and women, and men who don't own property. These historical truths starkly contrast the idea we're inundated with in elementary school about the American Revolution. It's divinely ordained, and a fight for freedom and values. However, the revolution extends beyond the Schoolhouse Rock video you watched as a youngster. There are in essence two American revolutions. The one that is a complex issue of economic and ideological factors and drivers, the historical American Revolution, and then there's the one made of stories and images, sometimes factual, sometimes not, that will live forever and throughout time, beyond the first one, the simulated American Revolution. One is not better than the other per se, and both are true. However, the simulated American Revolution that most people know is possibly more true. Here's why. The simulated revolution is more familiar, more well known. It is what we celebrate on the 4th of July, and why we sing the national anthem before sporting events. According to the idea of consensus reality, that which is generally agreed upon, the consensus, is reality. Now, even though the simulated American Revolution may not be wholly accurate, it does represent the knowledge and understanding of the majority of people within our country, therefore making it our current reality. Truth, French philosopher Michel Foucault says, is undoubtedly the sort of error that cannot be refuted because it has been hardened into the unalterable form in the long baking process of history. Simulated American Revolution, its characteristics baked into a practical set of images and ideas, is at this point true. But why does this occur? Why do the majority of people believe the simulated American Revolution, reducing a complex global issue into a simple battle between the Americans and the big bad British? Besides the idea that keeping people uneducated about the real truth behind issues may serve certain political agendas, a rabbit hole I will not dive down right now, we do know that humans want people and events to really mean something, to have significance, to fit into a greater story. It's nicer and frequently easier to understand something if it does fit into a greater narrative. However, this is not always the case, and to compensate, sometimes we have to stretch the story a bit, creating this simulation. It's usually a little bit less messy, and a tiny bit shinier. The American Revolution has been transformed into what it currently is to provide a greater inspiration in the pursuit of the values and ideas that our country was founded on. Life, liberty, property holding, all these sorts of things. However, it serves as a better motivator than a story about how the American Revolution was just a battle. Not so revolutionary, is it? Hence why the simulated version still exists. But maybe all this dichotomy is just a bunch of nonsense, a bunch of hokum, and the simulated American Revolution is just the historical reproduction. Anthropologist Edward Bruner says, maybe we should see all culture as continually invented and reinvented. argue for transcending such dichotomies as original copy and authentic inauthentic. We view the American Revolution in the way that we do currently because it is what most people need or want, something to embody us, to be our historical perspective, to represent our time. And that makes it no less real or authentic. Now, just as bell-bottom jeans go in and out of fashion, so do historical perspectives. There is the Whig view of history, as the likes of George Bancroft saw the Revolution as a divinely ordained pathway toward moral perfection in human affairs. And then came the Imperial School, seeing it not as a fulfillment of national destiny, but as a constitutional conflict with Britain. Later you had the progressive historians, like Carl Becker, who argued that the Revolution came out of increasing social stratification. Finally, in the 50s came the Neo-Whig view, reflecting the more conservative political atmosphere at the time. The current historical consensus is that the Revolution was less unified and more ideologically complex than the idealistic historians before had thought. Setting all viewpoints aside, it can be clearly seen that our current social and economic standing does influence the way we see history. What is important is not that simulated history resembles the historical one, but rather that simulated history can stand for what we want and what we expect from it. We must derive value from our history.